Did you know that religious people were the only people Jesus ever got mad at? Hello Internet, I'm David Dorn, and this is Preposterous, which is not your typical Bible study. Now Jesus also got mad at people who were making money in the temple, but they kind of fit into that same group. Did you know that Jesus was known for eating and drinking with prostitutes and corrupt business people? But still, it was the religious people that Jesus had harsh words for. This kind of gives you an insight into the fact that God sees the world differently than the way you and I see it. This week we're talking about Matthew chapter 5, verse 20, and Jesus is talking about the righteousness of the religious people. Let's look at this. Jesus says, "For I say to you, that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." Jesus is saying, unless you are better than the super religious, you will never see the kingdom of heaven. And back in episode 1 of Preposterous, we learned that the kingdom of heaven is not some far-off place where you sit on a cloud and strum musical instruments. But in fact, the kingdom of heaven is here, now. It's happening all around us. Sure, there's a place you go when you die, but that place is also happening around us now. Heaven is entering our world as we speak. So on Sunday morning, when everybody is worshiping God, heaven breaks in at that moment. When you stop on the side of the road to help a homeless person, heaven is breaking in at that moment. When Jesus was eating with the prostitutes and the corrupt business people, the tax collectors, heaven was breaking in at that moment. Yet it's only the people who are following Jesus and allowing their lives to be changed by him who can see heaven breaking in now. The super religious miss it. Why? Because they're so caught up in the do's and the don'ts of religion that they miss the point. The religious people of Jesus' day had so many rules in which to live by. Matter of fact, they had rules on how many steps you could take on the Sabbath day, the day of rest, because they thought that if they could get everybody to obey God's law on the same day, that God would show up. And these are the same people who crucified Jesus. Go figure. God says in the Old Testament, "For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings." Jesus is less concerned with religious acts, although they're not wrong. Matter of fact, the verses right before verse 20, Jesus is saying that the law is good and that we should obey it. But he's more concerned with us getting at the heart of it. He's more concerned with us living into reality. The reality of us showing love to other people. You know, what are you practically doing to show Jesus' love to the people around you? And there's so many ways to express love. It's more than just saying, "I love you." It's putting it into action. And Jesus did say that all the laws in the Old Testament, the ones he's talking about, can be summed up by two things: love God and love people. To illustrate this point, Jesus would later go on to tell the story of the Good Samaritan. And Jesus said there was this guy that was traveling and got beaten up on the side of the road and left for dead. And he had a couple of religious people came walking by. But they didn't just walk by this guy who was laying there dying. They walked on the other side of the road and pretended not to see him. They were too busy doing what they had to do for the day. And then came this Samaritan. And you got to understand, Samaritans back then were the people on the other side of the tracks, the people that the Jews never talked to. Yet this Samaritan guy saw this man, this Jewish man, laying on the side of the road. He picks him up, brings him to a hotel, takes care of him, pays for his medical treatments, pays all of his bills. And Jesus says, who was this man's neighbor? Who showed love to this person? Who do you think? Jesus is saying it's not about the do's and the don'ts of religion. It's about getting at the heart of it. You know, so we can pray our prayers, we can read our Bible, we can listen to only Christian music, but if we don't get that what God really wants from us is us to fall in love with him and to love other people, then we will never see what God is up to in the world around us. Ever. So this week, tell me in a comment or a video response, where do you see God working lately? Where do you see heaven breaking in? Have you gotten a chance to experience that recently? For me, I was in an airport recently and I got a chance to talk to this woman. It was this wonderful conversation that we had talking about God. And this woman had just recently lost her husband and her daughter to suicide, but yet God showed up in that moment. And I just sat back and marveled at how he works. So what's your story? Leave it in a comment or a video response and you can end up in next week's episode of Preposterous. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. I'm all the time putting out opportunities for you guys to be a part of Preposterous. And make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube. We're starting to put out more and more videos throughout the week, so you won't want to miss that. But I hope you have a great day. God bless.